I want to welcome you to my special interview this afternoon with Toronto, Ontario, Canada, craftsman, musician, and author William Grit Laskin. Grit is a musician and a founder of a record company. I wanted to focus today on the novel he has written called The Stradivari Formula. We're going to talk about everything in his life that we can fit into this small time frame. Grit, welcome to the Friday afternoon music mix.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored that you're interested and happy to chat away.
I did not know who you were until Eric Alper introduced me, and I was just blown away. My audience is a music audience, and as I mentioned in the introduction, you are a great musician in your own right. You have 3 albums, Barley Green for Me, Earthly Concerns, and A Few Simple Words. You also were one of the founders of Borealis Music, which then became part of True North Records. Your experience as a writer.
I've actually published 5 books. 3 of them are nonfiction. The very first book I did way back in the early 80s was all about the musical instrument makers who were working within the city of Toronto. It was quite a phenomenon at that point, all kinds of instruments. More pointed to me, there are 2 kind of coffee table style books on the inlay art that I do on my guitars, taking the traditional medium of inlay, and I've pushed the envelope into what's done with it. So there's a couple of those, but then there was an early kind of young adult novel that got published in the mid-90s or so, around 96, I think. And then I got very busy. For me, I'm a guitar maker, that's my living. So anything else was extracurricular. Even the record company. For me, it was a labor of love. There was staff, and I had a partner who worked for it. After 25 years of running that label, and we had, I don't know, almost 75 acts on the label, more than 250 releases. We did move the ownership over to True North Records, Bruce Coburn's label, and other people like that. We had been working with the owner anyway on other things, and it was just a natural fit. But once that happened, I had extracurricular time back after 25 years. I'd finally thought, this idea for a thriller novel that nobody else would ever have the plot about because it's all about Luthiers doing it. I'm dying to write this thing. And it sat in my head for a quarter of a century. I said, I just have to do it now. I took a week out of the shop, spoke to the final people whose brains I had to pick for information, and then I just sat down and started writing, and that became the Stradivari Formula.
The book uses the term Stradivari. That's the actual Italian pronunciation, whereas Latin pronunciation, which most people know about, is called Stradivarius. Your novel talks about the fact Stradivari made cars, which I knew nothing about.
Yeah, yeah. And that anomaly stuck in my head. Like any instrument maker, we pay attention out of interest to people who've preceded us in the previous centuries and who they were and what they did, and, just out of general interest. So I've already read lots about Strad and knew about him and his work and his instruments. And I did know that despite other amazing builders whose eras overlapped him to some degree, Guarneri and Amati and Steiner and all these really well-known names, violins that are worth millions these days, if they're still around. And yet, at the time, his violins were considered better than anybody else's. Just a bit. So what was it? Was there actually a secret? And then I started thinking, and that anomaly that there are, we think, 5 Stradivari guitars in existence, only one playable at the moment, but they exist. I thought, 5 guitars. Is it just a fact that Strad thought, I'm not going to say no to an order. I've got bills to pay. I'm mostly a violin maker, but if they want a guitar, I'll make him one. He also made a mandolin. He made a harp, like a classical harp, but mostly violin. So I thought, what if somebody close to him knew there was a secret and thought, we better put that somewhere that his competitors would never think to look, and hide it from them. And that's what happened. But this story is in contemporary times, as some people stumble on something that leads them to this, this adventure to figure this out at the same time as there's two forces. There's some people who are aware that there was a secret out there. They couldn't find it. But when it's found, they don't want it to be seen by anybody because it would totally screw up their life in every respect. And then there's this other side that's also was vaguely aware that there was something somewhere, but they want it out in public for the good of violins. So there's that. And then we have our luthiers coming up the middle, innocent luthiers who stumble onto this, and it's their job to figure this out. Luthiers are the heroes for the first time in a thriller.
I'm glad you said that. It's important that we point out you are a luthier, only Order of Canada luthier. For people who don't understand what a luthier is, this is someone who builds or repairs string instruments. In addition to that, you have received the Saydie Bronfman Award for Excellent. The new novel follows up one.
It's the second novel that's been published. There is a third one sitting with my agents and a fourth one that I'm in the middle of writing right now. So I'm having a lot of fun with the fiction. This is my extracurricular evenings when I've got them, and a Sunday I'll write, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Where can they obtain the new book, Grit?
Probably the easiest thing for people, go to Amazon. It was distributed to bookstores, but I'm not a known author. I'm not a bestseller. So you're not going to find it everywhere. In Canada, a lot of bookstore chains had it at the beginning, of course, and some will still have it. But probably the simplest, just go to Amazon or even Barnes and Noble. Like a lot of the bookstore chains in the US, I knew had it. I would see the coverage. In fact, you can even get an audio version and a digital version. So you can hear me reading the story.
Your publisher also has a website where you can obtain that.
Since that novel came out, the publisher has been sold to another publisher. So we are in a long transition period right now as the new publisher is taking over all these imprints and all these authors, and we don't know what's happening, to be honest. So I have no certain idea that you can buy it from their website. Probably best to go to a bookstore that and order it from them, or Amazon, or walk into your local independent bookstore and tell them, order one. That's another way to do it.
That book, again, is called The Stradivari Formula. Grit's first novel was called Angel Could Smell the Fire. He also has several nonfiction books that are available. Let's talk about you as a luthier, Grit. How did you get the nickname Grit?
Well, I've had it since I was 10 years old. It's just a silly story, but it's the truth. I went to summer camp as a 9-year-old, as a kid. I'm 72 now, so you can imagine how long ago that was. The nickname of the era, my real name's William, but I was never called Will or Willie, which would have worked fine with Laskin. But they called me Bill. And there's too many L's in a row. It becomes Belaskin. So even as a kid, attendance in primary school, you put your hand up, I had to pause between my first and last name. So I go to summer camp. They called me Billy Goat. That was, the silly name of the era, I guess. Then just kids playing with language, thinking it's funny. It morphed from Billy Goat to Billy Groat to Groat to Grit over a couple of years. And then I thought, my pals have given me a new name, my friends, and it worked better with my last name. So I just latched onto it. And when I came to Toronto from Hamilton, Ontario, which is 40 miles away, I came to Toronto as a teenager, 17-year-old. That's how I introduced myself everywhere. And I was playing music a bit more then. So in clubs, I'd play it as Grit Laskin, and people would come up to me afterwards and say, "Do you have a brother who makes guitars?" Or they'd see one of my guitars and they'd say, "Do you have a brother who sings?" No, no, that's me. It's just all me. So anyway, there you go. That's the truth.
And you still perform.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I still am with a band that I've been since I was 18 years old, honest to God. They won't let me escape, basically. We used to play more in early days and folk festivals and things like that. And a lot of clubs regionally to us, like going into New England or Michigan or other parts of Canada. Now we get together once a year and we would play 3 cities, kind of an annual tradition. It's like family. just having fun. We know each other so well. We hardly even have to rehearse anymore. Just get on stage. Somebody else in the band could start a new song we'd never heard, and we'll start thinking, "Oh, hmm, you're in G. Yeah, yeah. Oh, listen to that. Oh, and there's the chorus. Okay, maybe I'm gonna pick up my mandolin and play along with that maybe." Or somebody else grabs the fiddle and, whatever. It's just fun. So, yeah, still keeping my hand in just a little bit.
You're coveted for your incredibly beautiful handmade guitars, the Laskin guitar. There are quite a few well-known artists. This is just a sample that I picked up. Tom Cochran, Katie Lang, Jesse Cook, Stan Rogers. Things you're known for: body bevel and side port sound hole.
Okay, sure. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking about those. Those are innovations that have spread like wildfire through the luthier world and even into the manufacturing level now. Let's start with the bevels, where your right arm comes around the body, especially. I call it the armrest. Cut away the sharp edge where it sits against the rib cage when you're sitting and playing. I will bevel the back edge if people sit when they play. That began with a customer, a classical guitarist. She was telling me, I'm often at the end of rehearsals, I've got all this red mark on my arm and it's sore from leaning on the edge. A steel string player like me, or even a flamenco player, we kind of hug the guitar. Often our pinky finger is resting on the top while we're finger picking or flat picking or whatever we do. But a classical player, their hand is suspended above the strings. So they don't rest their pinky on the top. So their arm is more at a 45-degree angle at the top edge of the guitar. So she said, "Could you round it off a bit and make it more comfortable? It's so annoying." So, okay, sure. Do you care how much I do? No, no, use your whatever you think is going to work. And I did it. And I've been doing it ever since because it was so comfortable. And I started getting letters from arts medicine clinics. A couple of key ones that have stayed in my head are from in the Bethesda, Maryland area. There's a lot of hospitals that deal with artist issues of repetitive stress and things like that, especially with musicians. I would get letters of support from them saying, "Thank you for finally doing something I've wanted to see on guitars forever." And he said, "It's not just your rationale. I was thinking, gee, we're leaning on these veins that are feeding the muscles that we overstress. Why limit that?" But he said, "No, that's not the most important thing because the blood will find a way to get where it wants to go. But what you're doing is easing right shoulder strain." And that's one of the biggest things they see with people, careers of reaching around a box, schlepping guitar cases, and all that stuff. It's a stress. And if you're someone who doesn't regularly exercise or warm up your muscles, like most classical musicians learn to do critically, because if they don't, basically they're screwed and their careers are going to be over by age 50. So they know they have to keep their muscles pliable and moving. Just like an athlete who's constantly warming up, exercising and doing that. They don't just say, "Okay, well, I've reached the age 40, I'm in good shape now, I'm done." No, 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 it's forever. That's the first bevel. And then comfortable against the rib cage, I bevel there. And you talked about the side ports, and you have to know that name was given a second sound hole that is on the top bulge. We call it the bout. The one that's just below your ear as you're playing. That came about again. I can't claim that I'm so brilliant. I came up with these ideas. It was a customer saying, "I want to hear my guitar stronger. Could you create a monitor or something? What about putting a sound hole nearer to my ear?" And all right, let's try it. I did, and I made that one with a sliding door so we can open and close this hole. It ran on rails on the inside, was lined with felt and all that stuff. My client comes to pick up the guitar. They're sitting about 7 feet away from me in my office at the time. They start playing it. They open it up, and yes, they heard their guitar much louder in their own ear. But what we didn't expect was out front. I was sitting 7 feet away, and that guitar sounded fuller. It went from and both of us are looking at each other like, what the hell did we just witness? We're open and closing it and trying it, and I'm playing and they're listening. And then I did it on another guitar and another one. The effect was consistent. It just made better guitars, better sounding out front, and you heard it stronger yourself. So I made it a standard feature, and the trade I'm in, the luthier world, gave it the name Sideport when other makers started to see it, experiment with it, try it, and they're incorporating it. And both the bevels and this extra sound hole, I purposely left in the Creative Commons. I didn't want to copyright or patent it because I wanted it to spread. If it's just making better guitars, people should be allowed to use it. That's my approach. I've certainly seen it spread like wildfire through the luthier world, both the bevels and the side ports. I've been seeing bevels on 2 different manufacturers who offer it, like big manufacturers, one in Japan. Taylor Guitars in the States offers a bevel, as well as other smaller producers and individual luthiers like me. Anyway, that's what those are. They are new innovations, and they just make better guitars, ergonomically to play and for sound.
You're well known for your inlay boards. Larry Robinson, who's the author of a book called The Art of Inlay, says that Grit is one of the most astonishing inlay artists in North America. Some of the videos, one that I want to recommend is Paul Hugh Miller's of Dream Guitars. He does one on YouTube where he shows one of your beautiful inlays and plays it on YouTube video. Your inlays are stunning. Do you special create those for people as an order?
It's mostly responding to clients. I have a waiting list, so I'm building all the time on commission. I never, ever repeat the art. Never. So it's not like a manufacturer who comes up with model fancy, and puts shell all over the place and then does it thousands of times for their pricey model. No, it's always original art. Even if a customer has multiple guitars and they like the theme, I'll tell them, okay, fine, but we're going to explore it a different way this time. Let's take a different approach to that theme. And I do keep the files if an instrument is ruined or destroyed and has to be rebuilt or was stolen or something like that. Then I would reproduce it, but generally not. The other thing to say about the inlay, answering your question, every once in a while I will do just what I want. Usually it's because I've saved a spot on my order list because I'm going to be doing a guitar show somewhere, a luthier show, and I want to bring something to show. And I usually like to have something that could be available for sale. Every once in a while, I'll get the opportunity to do just what I feel like at the moment. If that happens, it's usually social comment or something about my sensibilities that I'm portraying. If I may, in general, my approach to inlay, even though this is a traditional medium, and I mean really traditional, in Egyptian tombs, they found ancient musical instruments with inlay of ivory and tortoiseshell and ebony, so it's been used in musical instruments for a long time, thinking decorating them. So I'm just taking a traditional medium, rooting in some of the shell species that was typical, but I've expanded that. But I'm pushing the envelope. How best to describe this for you? In the fine art world, in the visual art world, we've gone from intense, amazing realism, like in the Renaissance period, say. And then when photography arrived, this intense realism wasn't needed so much anymore. So artists started looking at different ways of interpreting the world as they see it in a way that would convey some other aspect of the scene to the viewer, whether it's abstract or wild colors or elongated shapes of human beings, whatever the artist is and what they've done. That opened up the world to interpreting it differently. Whereas in inlay, whether it's on instruments or on furniture or whatever, it was typically very cartoonish, winged creatures, yeah, lots of floral things, but not realism as was done in the fine art world. So that is what's exciting me, is to push this medium closer to realism. At the same time, the other thing that drives me is wanting to say something through the imagery. So to me, this is not decorating guitars. Not at all. That stuff, I admire at the skill level, but it bores me creatively. This is my canvas. And luckily, my guitar customers are giving me money and paying me to have fun and enjoy this other aspect to the instrument that also makes it incredibly personal for them, separate and additional to all the ways we've already made the guitar tailored to them ergonomically, the materials, the body size, the scale length, the measurements, all those things that a solo luthier discusses with a client. We've already gone through, and then we move to this other level, which means people who are getting guitars from somebody like me, it's such a very rich transaction. It's filled with so many layers. It is so far away from, walking into a store and buying that table that looks good and you think it'll really fit in the living room. It's not like that. It becomes a personal relationship with each client. Lots of discussions, lots of email, phone calls. Doesn't matter where they are on the planet. I'm talking to them by phone. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on and on. This is where I live.
Your website is William Laskin, and let me spell that, LASKIN.com. There's contact information on there as well, email, and his phone number. Interested in talking with him about ordering a guitar, you can do that personally. I recommend you take a look at his incredible YouTube channel under William Laskin. One of them that is really good there is called Memories in Grit Shop. He also has some albums recorded from his band and his music through Borealis Records, which he was a co-founder of, The Barley Grain for Me, Earthly Concerns, and A Few Simple Words. One of the people that they signed is Crystal Shawanda, who is a First Nation artist in Ontario, will feature some of her music, as well as Jesse Cook's flamenco music. He uses the guitars. Grit's new novel, The Stradivari Formula, can be obtained on Amazon, through Barnes & Noble, ordered through your bookshop. You have enlightened me and my listeners with your skills of writing, making, and repair of all stringed instruments, not just guitars. Grit, thank you so much for being a special guest of my show today.
I had a lot of fun being here.
I hope we'll get to meet in person sometime. That'd be a lot of fun.
I agree. That'd be lovely. So thank you again for your interest, Gregory. Appreciate it.